also got along some copies of his novel, well, kind of novel based on reality, Roswell Rising. He's brought those along tonight. How much are they going for, Ben?
They're £9, but there's a couple of dog-eared ones. You can have them for a £5.
There we go. Dog-eared ones for a £5 or £9 for the non-dog-eared ones. So depending on whether you're going to read it yourself or give it to somebody as a gift, we'll define which of those you purchase. But yeah, by all means, he's brought some copies of those along tonight. So without further ado, I'd like to very much welcome back my good friend and researcher, Ben Emlyn-Jones.
Thank you. Thank you both.
Thanks, Dave. Thank you very much. Thank you.
So I'll go grab that. Put that over there. There we go.
Let's go. There we
So,
go.
thanks, mate. Thanks. Oh, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for coming. I really, really appreciate it. We've got quite a crowd here tonight. You've come from a long way. We've had got a gentleman from Cambridge. We've got a lady from Nottingham. And I'm come from Oxford. So we've come from a long, long way away to converge on this spot tonight. For the Cambridge guy, all I can say is boat race. But yes, I appreciate this very much. It's always nice that we make the effort to travel this way. It's a really, really big thing, and I appreciate you coming all this way just to hear my dulcet tones and what I'm going to talk about. As Dave said, I am a researcher. I'm a tinfoil hat wearing, sky watching, UFO nut, and lots of associated subjects as well. At least that's what I'm being called. I'm not sure I'd use that language to describe myself, but you know, I'm happy to own my abuse, as they say. So this is basically what I do. I mean, I have this website here, HPANWO, Hospital Porters Against the New World Order, and it's a website where I put on lots of articles, and well, I haven't put a big article up on the main site, but the main site is also a portal to everything else that I do, and I've got a website, I've got the radio shows that I do, and the news site and things like that. So there's an awful lot there for you to see if you want to go to that website and to have a look around. You'll be there quite a long time, I can tell you. Now, I have been, it's not my first time in BUFOG. That's one of my little illustrations that I did on when I was here last at BUFOG. I was here, I think it was 2015, Dave, was it?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, I was here in 2015 talking about energy politics and UFOs. So it's good to be back talking about another subject now. It's a completely different subject, but it's one I know you'll find interesting. I've got to congratulate Dave on what he's got here, this outfit he's got here. 10 years, he's 10 years now, isn't it, Dave?
Yep.
10 years old, Birmingham UFO group, and there's all kinds of things on the website that shows the research that's done. And I'd also like to say that we're living through a time period when there's a lot of nastiness within our community. And without going into details, I'm sure a lot of you have already heard, you know what I'm talking about. It kind of escaped you. There's some bad feeling, there's some bitterness, and there's some really quite violent conflict going on. And most people are just biting their tongues and keeping their heads down and hoping that the forces of darkness pass them over. But you can only fight darkness with the light. I've got to say, Dave has done a good job. Dave has spoken out about this, and he is fighting back against the darkness with the light, as I try to do as well. So well done, Dave, for that. I think we'll see more of us do that. The forces of darkness will be banished from this land, which is what we want. So, come on. No, I just need to do it the other way. Right, bear with me, ladies and gentlemen. Right, the Nottinghamshire Roswell. What is the Nottinghamshire Roswell? Well, you know what the Roswell incident is. In July of 1947, an artefact of extraterrestrial origin, I'm quite convinced that was the case, came to grief on the Earth's surface and was secretly salvaged by the government. They moved it, they sent in the military, put a cordon around the area, they cleared up all the physical evidence, the decisive physical evidence that had appeared there, and then they put out a cover story that was just a weather balloon, and they changed their mind several times over the years. over that, to what it actually really was instead. They said parachute test dummies, things like that. You name it, they came up with it. Now, what's interesting about the Roswell incident, and we should point out also that the Roswell incident it's just past its 70th anniversary. If you look at the T-shirt I've got here, this is the Roswell 70 T-shirt. I also should mention that something else I'm very proud of is that I organised the only public event to mark the anniversary, the 70th anniversary of the Roswell incident, outside Roswell itself. So I'm very proud of that. We had a wonderful day in Oxford at a pub called the White House. I'm not kidding. So so I'm not going to let the Roswell incident be forgotten, and neither is anyone else. But part of the Roswell story is the knowledge that Roswell is not the only one of its kind. Definitely not. This is kind of an illustration of what happened, or an artist's impression of what might have happened during the Roswell incident. You see here the extraterrestrial artifact crashed, people around it, exploring it, the security, the helicopters and things like that, acting as security to keep onlookers away, keep curious UFO people like me out of the area. There weren't many of those in those days, but to keep generally to keep it secret. But there are many incidents very similar to the Roswell incident. In fact, this is a whole sector of ufology, the crash retrieval. The event, as I explained, where something from another world comes to grief on the Earth's surface, secretly salvaged by the government. The government then put out a cover story and basically trying to make everyone forget it. And it's very often just dogged researchers like us that keep the story alive and ferret it down to get to the truth. And it keeps it going. Now, Roswell wasn't even the first, incidentally. There were several others. There's distinct evidence to suggest there was one in Missouri in 1941. There might have been one here in Britain in 1940. There's a whole list of them. In fact, there's a book, which I shall show you. It's a book by Ryan Wood. Just doing it again, sorry. I've got to just... It's this book, Magic Eyes Only, Earth's Encounters with Extraterrestrial Technology. Ryan S. Wood, forward by the late great Jim Mars, who sadly passed away a few days ago. This book lists over 100 of such events during the 20th century. Now, so that's an average of one a year. Now, even if half of those are real, even if a quarter of those are real, we're talking about this is a regular event. These, whatever they are, they sometimes break down and they sometimes crash, just like Earth aircraft do, unless some people say they put them there, the aliens put them there deliberately. There's all kinds of theories about why these events happen. But there are many examples of Roswell-like events. Now, when one of these Roswell-like events happens, as I've explained, now this is a very interesting picture. It's a still from a piece of footage that was recorded in Russia in the 1960s that appears to show one of these such events, and there's a good reason to believe it's genuine. In Russia, the Soviet Union, America's rival in the Cold War, the same thing happens. These Roswell, I mean, the word Roswell is actually the name of a place. It's a city in New Mexico, USA, which is close to where the actual original Roswell event happened in 1947. However, it's only a matter of time before the Oxford English Dictionary adds the word Roswell as a common noun to refer to these particular events. In fact, we in ufology already do. We talk about the Brazilian Roswell, the Russian Roswell, the Welsh Roswell, etc., etc. Now, wherever these events happen in the world, and they have happened across the world, as you would expect, in many countries, the same thing happens. The process I've just described: cover-up, salvage, secrecy. It's as if a global policy was in place to deal with these particular events that all nations on Earth, even those that were on rival sides in the Cold War, are adhering to. And that's very interesting. Now, the event I'm going to talk about this evening is an event which is a Roswell. It's a Roswell with a small r. And I call it the Nottinghamshire Roswell because it happened in the fair county of Nottinghamshire, where at least one of the people who's in this audience right now comes from. This happened in 1987, so we're now talking 30 years ago. So I don't know if you've heard anything about this independently, Maria, have you?
I'm not from Nottingham, I just live there.
Oh right, okay, I'm sorry.
Disclaimer.
She's not from it. Okay, but I mean, people in that area, I used to spend a lot of time in that area because I had a partner who lived there. And I used to visit her regularly, and it was like a second home to me. And this is kind of how I got involved in this, because I made contacts in the local area when I had a base of operations where I could do research, which I wouldn't have had otherwise. But I believe there was a Roswell in Nottinghamshire in 1987. I'm absolutely pretty sure of that. The evidence is all there. I mean, it's an evidence that potentially is as spectacular as that for the original Roswell incident in 1947. Now the story of this event has, it took a long time to come to the surface, and this is a recurring curse in ufology. It really is. The time between an event happening and research beginning. In the case of the Roswell incident, it was 30 years. It was actually in 1977 when Jesse met Stan. And Stan Freeman did the interview with Jesse Marcel Sr., which led to the book, The Roswell Incident, and the rest is history. But I mean, this happens as in other places. And in the case of the Aurora incident in Texas, which is the earliest Roswell-type event I've come across, it was actually 70 years before researchers actually started looking into it. And it's a lot of course, most of the witnesses were dead by then, and all kinds of things. The opportunity had gone past by then. And in this case, there was a number of years before this information was actually published. But there was the story of how it came to be. Basically, it was published on a worldwide scale in this magazine, Nexus magazine. I subscribe to this one. It's one of the most widespread and widely watched, or widely read rather, magazines on these particular subjects. But this is volume 4, issue 6 of Nexus magazine, published in November and December of 1997, 10 years after the event actually happened. But it refers to some research done by someone called Harry Mason, who's an author from Australia, and Nexus is an Australian-based magazine. And Harry Mason had been in touch with a couple of people, including one guy I know called John King, who used to run a UFO magazine called Skywatch. And there was a UFO reality article on this as well. There's a lot of magazines at that time which are now defunct. But Skywatch was an e-zine. It was like a first-generation ufology e-zine edited by John King. Now, there had been several, it started off with an email by someone called Ashley Rye, who actually went on record as the person to alert the UFO magazine that this has happened. But it didn't take long for other witnesses to come out, including, and there was some very, very good research done by local people in the Nottinghamshire area, including some people who have been assisting me. And the story is very, very interesting indeed. And it all begins on the 12th, on Thursday, on a dark night at 1:30 in the morning, Thursday the 12th of November, 1987. Most people were asleep in bed. Some people were watching late night movies, which ironically there was a war movie on about bombing and things like that. There was a huge explosion. There was a very, very loud bang. At first people thought it was thunder, which is understandable because when you hear these noises, your instinct is to think, well, what's it most likely to be in terms of my memory and what I know about things. So people first thought it was thunder. They thought it might be a low-flying aircraft, but it was far louder. It was far more penetrating, and there was a shockwave. There was a shockwave that did considerable damage to the structures of some buildings. Chimney pots fell off, slates came off roofs. A couple of buildings got cracks in their walls. And in fact, one of the principal witnesses, which the original researchers managed to dig up, is actually a guy who runs a local insurance broker's firm. Because his office was inundated with claims from the area where this happened. Another one was actually a TV and video repairman, because along with the explosion there appears to have been some kind of electromagnetic pulse. Very, very, very powerful electromagnetic field was generated, which is what you often get with a nuclear explosion. Some people claim that this was some kind of nuclear explosion. It probably wasn't, because there would have been very intense heat effects if it had been a nuclear explosion. There doesn't seem to have been any heat effects, but there was an electromagnetic pulse. But it's actually quite amazing. There were no fatalities. Nobody appears to have been killed or seriously injured, but people were very shocked. 1:30 in the morning, they were woken up. Some were woken up, and they came out and had a look in the sky. And it's when they looked into the sky, actually, that they saw something remarkable. They saw some lights. Now, Dave's just been talking about lights in the sky and strange things, beams coming down to the ground, things like that. What people saw was actually multiple lights in the sky, moving in strange ways. They appear to be getting brighter and brighter as the lights moved across the sky, and this might indicate that they were getting lower in altitude. Now, this is a rough area of where the event took place. This is a rough outline. We don't know exactly. I mean, the noise was heard much further afield than this. But this is a rough outline of the area where the lights were seen. There was serious shockwave damage. There was enough shockwaves to do serious damage, and the electromagnetic pulse effects were found. What happened was a couple of local researchers have told me that some substations were damaged. In some areas, the electricity was off for a whole week. And there was also damage to water pipes. Some people had to have water delivered in Bowsers, just like they did in 1976 during the Great Drought. But what we basically have here is a situation where the lights travelled from a northeasterly direction in a southeasterly direction. This is an area of land that today is called the Nottingham Conurbation. It wasn't called that in those days, but basically it refers to the city of Nottingham and several large towns in that area. And we have here things such as Kirkby in Ashfield, Sutton in Ashfield, Ravenshead, Blythe, Mansfield, Hucknall, etc. The city of Nottingham is down at the bottom, you can see there. Give you some information. The big orange line there is the M1 motorway. The lights in the sky, which we're talking about here, came in from the northeast of this area to the southwest. They were heading in a northeast-southwesterly direction. They were first spotted above Mansfield there. You see the town of Mansfield and that big green block there, Sherwood Forest of Robin Hood fame. They were first seen in that area, travelling towards the southwest of this area. South of Mansfield, that's known as the Misk Hills. There's several other pieces of woodlands. It's a kind of like, it's a patchwork of large towns, arable farmland, pasture, woodland, things like that. So it's a kind of mixed area. So this wasn't a remote desert location like with Roswell. This was a semi-urbanised area. There was a population in 1987, and within this circle there was a population of roughly 11,000 people. So it's a pretty populous area. The objects actually came down, and one of them, at least one object we know, hit the ground. One object hit the ground, it bounced. It's been described as bouncing. It hit the ground at a place called Thebes Wood, which is south of Mansfield. I'll be showing you that area in more detail in a moment. It managed to get back into the air. It did considerable damage over the area where it struck the ground first. But it got back into the air, then it came down in a second location and stayed there. But it travelled about 4 or 5 miles before it came down in a second location. Now, what's interesting here, what happened now, there are some similarities to this and the famous Berwyn Mountains incident of 1974. And I don't have the slide I'm looking for. Okay, I do, yeah. There were several strange similarities between the Berwyn Mountains incident. The Berwyn Mountains incident was there was a large explosion over a remote area of northeast Wales. Objects were seen on the ground, but also there was an immediate government response, a very, very swift response, and we see this with the Nottinghamshire Roswell as well. We see the same thing. By 2:15 in the morning, there were actually helicopters flying low over the area, military helicopters, including a Chinook, which is a large transport helicopter operated by the RAF. It's very easily recognisable because it has twin rotor blades set for one in front, one at the back. It's very easy to recognise. There were several other gunships and other armed helicopters around. They were shining lights down at the ground, which is what the police helicopters often do nowadays. But in those days, police helicopters weren't used as often as they are now. Today, in any big city, the helicopters are up there all the time, shining their spotlights down at the ground. And this, by 2:15 in the morning, this was happening. There were helicopters flying over this entire area. Right over Sutton in Ashfield, Kirkby, and all the way around there looking for something. These helicopters, a local researcher managed to find out these helicopters were deployed from RAF Coningsby and RAF Cranwell, and RAF Cranwell is shut down today. It's closed. But they worked out, they did a bit of inquiries, and they worked out that these assets had been deployed forward at the time, because the government would not, if the government, what I'm saying is basically the government knew something was going to happen. They knew there was going to be something like this happening, and they knew in advance, and they knew within a rough area where it would be happening. And you see the same thing with Berry Mountains. Army lorries driving up into the hills, just an hour later. They wouldn't have had time to deploy those assets that quickly if they weren't expecting it. They moved these assets forward to these bases in preparation for what was to come. Very, very strange indeed. By this time, I imagine a lot of people were awake, a lot of people were looking around in the area. A lot of people in the area do remember this. Now, of course, the first thing I wanted to do was I wanted to see, is there any mainstream media record of this? So I started looking at newspaper archives, and I wanted to see, well, was this covered in the local press? Now, unfortunately, these but the actual archives of various newspapers, and not Nigel, another researcher I'm going to introduce you to in a moment, he hasn't found any record. However, there is from the Nottingham Post. The Nottingham Post is the principal local newspaper in that area, and I came across this. This was published in 2010. Do aliens exist, and if so, have they visited Mansfield? Either way, newly released government reports make an interesting read. Is Nick Pope here? No, he's not.
Yeah.
Oh, Nick, change your clothes. Wear something more fashionable. This was all part of Nick Pope's great UFO release. You know, we're coming clean on UFOs. I was head of the UFO project, and this is them. We're releasing them to the National Archives. Yeah. The National Archives is releasing thousands of papers, previously classified Ministry of Defence documents, today relating to what may or may not be out there. These newly released files shed no light on any of that. They do, however, reveal a high degree of interest in a 1987 incident. In terms of the Nottinghamshire revelations, the files highlight the persistent efforts and meticulous notes of another person or organisation in finding out what really happened south of Mansfield in the early hours of November the 12th, 1987. Very precise. Very precise. According to the letters sent to the MOD, the person learned of the event in the magazine UFO Reality. The letter writer explained how he or she had my doubts after reading the article, but ignoring the report would do no good. They then wrote to the editor of UFO Reality with a few background details on past work in ufology and expressing an interest in the Mansfield crash. I prefer calling it the Nottinghamshire Roswell to the Mansfield incident. I think it's more fitting. So I decided to have a look around where this might have happened. Now, the actual location, I actually got in touch with a local researcher in the Nottingham area called Daniel Bostock, who actually lives in Kirkby. And he said, oh, everyone knows where this happened. It was Thieves Wood. Now, this is Thieves Wood. This is just a few miles south of Mansfield in the Ashfield district. And it's Forestry Commission land, it's a large woodland. And so Dan and I, and a couple of other people, we took a little trip up to investigate, and Dan thought he knew where all this had happened because he reported there was a large fire at the time. Now Dan was, I think he was a teenager at the time, but he does remember it. So we basically, I haven't got a pointer or anything, but we basically took this is the A60, this is the main road between Nottingham and Mansfield. And you just turn off at the top there, the very top of the woods, and there's a little road that leads down towards the left there. And we walked along there, and there were some houses just along that small road. And we actually stopped and we knocked on a couple of doors, but most of the people were out. There was only one person we actually spoke to who was in. And they said they didn't know anything about it. They had been living there at the time, but they didn't hear anything about it. We found an area that was burnt. There was some woods where it looked like there had been a fire. There was lots of foul trees. I counted the rings on the trees and on the stumps, and they were within. One of them was the one I counted was 64 years old, which means it would have been around when this event happened. And we did find this stump. This stump is about 12 feet high, and it's just sticking out over this patch of bracken and mud and logs, just abandoned logs and stumps. And this does look like it's been burnt. The bark's come off, it's blackened, and it does look like it has suffered a fire. We don't know exactly when. I mean, we need more expert analysis on this sort of thing. Now, after Dan and I finished our little expedition, I made a little video about this. It's a bit scrappy, it's not my best video, but I edited it and I uploaded it to YouTube, my YouTube channel, Pamlo TV. And I got contacted by this guy called Nigel. This is him, Nigel Crowley. He's a local man. And he contacted me, he says, Ben, you were looking in the wrong place. I know where the UFO came down in Thieves Wood. And so I got in touch with Nigel and I said, really, do tell. And we got in contact, and he told me a few things, and eventually he agreed to meet me and Dan went back to Thieves Wood, and we met up with Nigel, and we did another little expedition into the woods to try and find out what it was, and Nigel showed me. And Nigel is an interesting character, very, very interesting character indeed. Oh, I love crunching ice cubes. Now, he's what I would say, he's one of these amazing people I'd say is a keeper of unofficial history, as opposed to keepers of official history. Now, how many people here have seen the X-Files? Okay, easier question, how many people have not seen the X-Files? In an audience like this, that's a much easier question to ask. Yeah, well, there's an episode of X-Files, it's actually the first episode of the 3rd season, and it's called The Blessing Way. And it has a very, very interesting... It's an Indian... There's this old Red Indian sage, and he's one of the main characters. And he says something very interesting, because there's a scene at the beginning of the episode where there's these little grey aliens in a railway truck, which has been buried. You see the railway truck is like buried, you can just see its roof. And they're running around in this railway truck, and these doors open, these skylights, trap doors open on the roof of the truck, and there's these men standing on the roof wearing hazmat suits, you know, total NBC, head to toe, gas masks like containment suits, and they throw these bombs in there, these incendiary bombs, which explode, and there's poison gas comes out and fire. You see it's burnt there like that, and the aliens run around screaming. And this old Indian sage, you get this voiceover from this guy who says, I'm paraphrasing here, but he says something like, history is something that the paleface likes, but history lies. The red man has learned to trust memory rather than history, because memory never lies. And I'm thinking, that's like Nigel. Very like Nigel. So I started asking Nigel what actually happened that day. That whole time period starting 12th of November 1987. And then Nigel told me that there had been, after the helicopters came, army lorries arrived, and the police as well came out in force. And they sealed off a large area around where this event had happened in Thieves Wood. And you can see here, Nigel said this is the area that was sealed off. He remembers it very well. The A60 road there, that's on the right hand side, this triangular shaped cordon. That was sealed off, that was shut. That was shut for about a week. Now a lot of people remember this, many people in the area actually remember the chaos that it caused. This is the main artery that links Nottingham and Mansfield. The traffic was all routed around Blydydd, a little town to the east. But these are much smaller roads, and so there's massive congestion for about a week. So this whole area, that whole road was shut for a week, as was the road on the hypotenuse there. And at the little town or the village on the bottom right is called Ravenshead. There's this road that leads along westwards towards Kirkby, and that there's Kirkby and Ashfield, the large town there. So the whole western side here of Thieveswood was shut off. Now, Nigel said, there's no record of this, but Nigel said that BBC Radio Nottingham reported that a helicopter had crashed, and this was why it was done. A helicopter crashed in Thieveswood, and so this area was sealed off. And yeah, if a helicopter crashes, this, unfortunately, in 2015 when I made this video, there were helicopter crashes. There were 3 actually in a very short space of time. There's one in London, there's one in Glasgow where a helicopter came down on top of a pub, and sadly some people in the pub were killed. There was also an American military helicopter came down in Norfolk. Now, in all 3 of those occasions, the emergency service response was appropriate to the event, where basically the ambulances came along. Maybe a couple of bobbies on the beat would have gone there and put a tape around it just to keep people away, and that was all that was necessary. Within a few hours, it was dealt with. This was different. This was at least, Nigel said it was at least 6 days. And there was, like I said, the army was there, the RAF, everybody was there. Now, Nigel said he knows where the area where it landed. And you can see on the bigger map, I'll show you on the bigger map, you can see, like, do you see the little square spot just there? I'm showing you a magnified version of that. The little square ball spot there. Now, this is Thieveswood here. This is Forestry Commission land. These are coniferous trees, various types of pine. I'm not sure exactly which sort, but maybe a secondary investigation can clear that up. But the object came down, heading from the northeast. It hit that part of the wood there, where there is no trees growing. As you see, the whole area is cut into blocks. There's little pathways running between these little blocks. They're about 300 by 600 feet. And in one of these blocks here, the whole area was cleared, and there's nothing there growing compared to the rest. So this is basically wasteland on Forestry Commission property, which is not being used. The timber's been removed, and nothing else has been planted. According to Nigel, what happened was, when this object landed, he said it was an object about 60 feet across. He reckons it was 60 feet across. And this is where it bounced. It came down in Thieveswood at this spot, and he said that when it did, it started a fire. So this is either through heat or through electromagnetic radiation, and through some other process. The presence of this artifact in that area, where its contact with the ground and with the trees, started a massive fire. And fire engines were called in from long distances away, including Bingham, which is in the Rushcliffe district, to the east of Nottingham, and several other areas. They came to attend this fire and put the fire out. No sooner they'd done that than the army turned up and sent the fire brigade packing. That's what we were told. And after the cordon was lifted, after 6 to 7 days, people who went in there found that whole area, the fire was out, but then what also happened was the whole area had been dug out. The topsoil had been removed completely. And sand had been sprinkled. Tons and tons of sand had been laid down in that area. So Nigel took us up that little pathway. We parked just on the main road, on the main road, and between Ravenshead and Kirkby, and we walked up the pathway towards that area. I've done an entire video about this called Not Roswell 2, which covers this all in detail. But this is the area here. You can see there has that satellite photo on Google Earth was taken, Nigel estimates, around about 2001. Since then there has been some regrowth. We have some small trees, some bushes. Bearing in mind that I ring-counted a few other stumps, and their trees there are usually 40 to 50 years old, most of the trees, before they fell. And so these are new trees that have come through. So these are trees that are like maybe 25 to 30 years old, so they're smaller. And there's some bushes, there's some bracken, but the soil is, it's all still very sandy then. And what happens is there's like a furrow. Now, there's a furrow in the ground, which Nigel says was made by the craft when it hit the ground. It basically caused a permanent change in the geology of that area. There's this wooden fence here that Nigel said was put up soon after 1987, where it basically, what you have beyond there is like a swamp. There's a wetland, it's very muddy, and this is the bottom of this furrow within that area there, which you see there. And as I said, the Forestry Commission is starting to replant trees. Probably in 30 to 40 years, those trees will be fully grown and you won't be able to see that anything happened there. But there is a difference in the consistency of the soil. I did just notice that. There were some molehills there as well. There's lots of molehills in this wood, and you can see it clearly by the different colours of the molehills. Within that little square block, this clearing, this little glade that has been created, as a result, Nigel says, of the impact of this craft, this sand, the sand that was dumped there in 1987, has changed the nature of the soil. And the molehills, and it is definitely more sandy in that area compared to, I went to another part of the woods and I looked at the soil there for comparison, and it's more brown, it's all brown loam, as opposed to this very sandy substance you get within that glade. Now, the question is why did the army do that? Why did they dig up the entire topsoil of that particular area? And there's several different reasons. One of them could be they were concerned about contamination. If there was sort of radioactive effects from this craft, it could include ionizing radiation, which could have an effect on, which could poison that area, as we found in, say, when nuclear accidents happen at Fukushima and places like that. There could be some other form of contaminant, some kind of chemical, which we don't know about, or bacteria, or virus, or some other form of pathogenic life, which could create a disease. And we've all seen those sci-fi horror movies where somebody comes down with an alien disease. It could be that they were seriously worried about that. They really were. Another reason is to remove any loose debris. Now this happened in Roswell on the Brazel Ranch, if you're familiar with the Roswell story. According to Major Jesse Marcel, there was a recovery operation in which a lot of loose debris was removed from the Brazel Ranch. Basically, the Army Air Force went in there, got down on their hands and knees, and just picked up all the little bits. There's been several other attempts, some investigations of that same area since, to try and locate other little bits. They haven't been successful, which seems that they did a good job. It's quite likely that they did dig down, and in this case they wanted to dig down to make sure there was nothing left under the ground either. Because this kind of debris could be, obviously, if they're instituting a cover-up and they're saying a helicopter crashed, nothing to see here, move on, they don't want bits of a flying saucer lying around that can prove them wrong. So what happened after that? The craft, the object, did not come to rest in Thieves Wood. It got back into the air. I mean, it's easy to make assumptions here, but it was acting as if we could speculate that it was damaged in some way. It came down, bounced, got back up into the air, which is how Harry Mason describes it. I've got a copy, I've actually copied Harry Mason's article onto Dave's computer if you want to read Harry Mason's Nexus article, because he talks about this in detail. But it got back into the air and it flew on for another 5 miles and it came to rest at Annesley Hall. So what we're looking at here, there's Thieves Wood, there's the clearing there in Thieves Wood. It got back into the air, it flew on and it came down at Annesley Hall, which is here, at the bottom left. It's about 5 miles. Flew over the Hollywell golf course, came down here at Annesley Hall. And that little horseshoe-shaped road is the road that leads towards the M1, junction 27 of the M1. The M1 motorway was not shut at all during this entire process, I should point out. Here's a close-up of this particular part of this story, which this is very interesting because this is where the object came down and it stayed. It hit the ground and it didn't get up again. It was only removed when basically the army removed it. But this little slip road here leads down here towards this junction 27 of the M1, and the M1 was not shut. Now Nigel and Dan and I took a little drive along the M1 from junction 27. We drove south, and just to see how much we could view this local area, because presumably if there was a secret crash retrieval going on, they would want to, in 1987, they wouldn't want drivers on the M1 spotting it. Now, you can't actually see anything of the Annesley Hall estate from the M1 because of trees. There's lots, big thick trees growing all the way along that eastern side of the M1. Now, it's possible those trees were, there could be fast-growing trees that were smaller, or at that time, we don't know. I mean, since there are actually many more trees in the country now than there were in 1987 because of various carbon offsetting and greenbelt laws, and also noise pollution laws. So it's possible that trees might have been transplanted in there since then, just to comply with those laws. But if there were no large woodland to shield Annesley Hall from view from the M1, the keepers of the secret must have found some other way. They must have put up screens or something. I don't know. Was anyone driving along the M1 in 1987? You remember strange things going on? This problem is asking you now after all this time. Yeah. This little road is interesting because there's an industrial estate there, and then there's some hotels and things like that. And you go along this slip road. Now, just opposite Annesley Hall, you can see Annesley Hall there. There's actually a Cold War nuclear bunker, and it's sealed off now. There's a big gate on it. I did film it in my video, and it goes down several levels apparently. Nigel wonders if that may have played a role in the crash retrieval. He's not sure. Annesley Hall is a 13th century stately home. It used to belong to the Chaworth family. For about 300 years, the Chaworth family owned it, and the Chaworth family were actually, Chaworth Morris, the man who's head of the Chaworth family, he was actually the Sheriff of Nottingham. Well, there's been several sheriffs of Nottingham, but he was one of the sheriffs of Nottingham, so that's very interesting. I wonder if he was a bad guy, I don't know. But there's an the original manor is now in ruins, it's derelict. But there's like a more recent one which is built next door, which is still standing, but it's semi-derelict. The other one's just fallen down. But there is a 19th century building there which is still occupied. It was the original servant and guest quarters for Annesley Hall. Yet, and strange enough, it has a lot of damage. It has some broken windows, but there are people in there because lights. There's electricity and lights are on in there. And what's more, there are gamekeepers and keeping trespassers away, as we found out by our own experience. Yeah, the whole Annesley estate is very, very carefully secluded. You're not allowed on. You can't go on it. And if you do, the gamekeepers will catch you. Whether they are actual gamekeepers, or I don't know if they're trying to catch poachers, or they're trying to keep people away for another reason. But anyway, there's a little...
property manager there who's been told that they have to keep it clear because they have a legal requirement by the council to keep it in the state it's in.
Oh, right.
To improve it, and as no one will pay for the criminal damage that's been done to it, they won't offset by renovating it either because the council won't help them. So there's
All right, thanks, Riyad. Where'd you get that information from?
from the guy that is one of the family members of the people that own it. So
Oh,
he's
right.
been helping them with some of the renovations that they're allowed to do and they're not allowed to.
Thanks. And if you just for the people on Panama TV, we just heard that apparently there's damage been done there, and the council aren't funding it. So the people there have to do it. They employ people to do it. But there's this road that leads along there called Dog and Bear Lane. It's a long straight lane. It's a pedestrian road. Runs along from the slip road there to this other road here, and that's as close as you can get to the actual location of the crash, the terminal crash. The actual, where I believe when Nigel was saying, well, Nigel actually told me where he thought the object came down, and I got onto Google Earth and I looked at that, and I concur with him for several reasons. This is an area called the Warren. It's not actually marked on any maps as the Warren today, but it used to be. There's actually some woods there, there's a little pond, and there, if you see here, this field, there's this arable field here, farms field on the estate, and the area, there's an area there which has been visibly darkened. There's an area of soil here, there's a blob there, and there's this big crescent there, a visibly darkened land. You can't see anything from ground level. You can only see it from, like I say, on this Google Earth image. I took a look all around the whole area. I went and I scoured all the fields in the area, and I can't find any other field for many, many miles in any direction with these same features. The reason that it's dark and may have something to do with the proximity of the artefact. It also could be to do with the precautions taken by the retrievers by maybe digging up the soil like they did in Thieves' Wood. But this is where it came to rest, and this area was sealed off as well, and the object was removed. Well, basically when the cordon was lifted, the cordon was there for the same, basically was laid down at the same time and for the same duration as the one at Thieves' Wood. And when the cordon was lifted and the members of the public were allowed back in, everything appeared normal. That there is Annesley Hall. You can see like there's a part of it there. This is the old bit, which is completely just bare walls. The 13th century original is over to one side. The Chayworth family lost Annesley Hall in, I think they may have lost it in a poker game or something, I don't know, but it was sold to somebody else. It changed hands again in the 1800s, and funnily enough though, I mean, essentially you've got that information, Ria. Nigel actually did make some inquiries with the management company, the land management company. He looked on the National Registry and he couldn't get any information. They wouldn't tell him anything about what might have happened there. The people who managed the estates, the company who managed the estates, put the phone down on him.
Yeah, they do that. They would really tell you.
Yeah. Oh, they were. They were very, very evasive indeed, and they would give him absolutely no information. They refused to speak to him.
Ben, she's got some really good photos of that place there in a phone.
Have you?
I've got tons if you want them.
Tons, absolutely.
Oh, yes, please.
It's crystal clear there.
Yeah.
She showed us.
Oh,
There's
thanks.
nothing that a high zoom can't fix from the angle.
Brilliant. Oh, great. Shame I didn't meet you earlier when we were looking at this in originally.
You can steal them off my Facebook. They're all on there.
Oh, thanks. I will do. Really. Yeah. Now this is us at Dog and Bear Lane, and that's Nigel pointing towards the Warren. Now these woods in the background there are the Warren. Now that green field there in the middle area is the arable field with the darkened spot on it, and this foreground area, that's just a pile of gravel in the foreground. But that's where we believe the object came to rest in 1987. That's as close as you can get to it on public land. You can get to it from the road that sort of dog legs around as well, but then there's a barbed wire fence, you can't get over there. And the gamekeepers, as I said, we've just been discussing about how cagey these people are, how hostile they are to inquiries and to visitors. They don't like people poking their nose in. And indeed, while we were there, as soon as we got to Dog and Bear Lane, and we were looking over at the servant and guest quarters, the semi-derelict servant and guest quarters, this car drives up, the windows wound down there, and people look at these people. You can't see it unfortunately on this picture. The people there are looking at us, and we believe this is part of the security detail for that area. These are maybe like the camo dudes you get Area 51. And these are the equivalent here. So they do take security very seriously at Annesley Hall. So you can't, if you want to. I mean, I don't know if there's any point. I had some wild ideas about, about trespassing and breaking in and seeing if I could get soil samples from the actual area. Because Peter Robbins has talked about this. Peter Robbins, one of the researchers for the Randlesham Forest incident, has talked about the own research that he's done at Cable Green. This was a field where one of the witnesses, Larry Warren, saw a craft come down. And Peter took some soil samples and found out that the environment was altered. It was permanently altered, or altered for a long time. by the presence of this artefact, which Larry saw. This, Nigel believes, is the extent of the Annesley Hall cordon. So there were two of these areas were sealed off, and this is that crescent shape there. The bit that's the slip road. That's that apparently, I don't know if that was shut or not actually, but the M1, I said the M1 motorway was opened. That the western side of the cordon was the M1 motorway, which was operating. There's junction 27 there. Now it stretched as far east as the town of Linby there in the Misk Hills, and as far south as the large town of Hucknall. Now that big urban area there is Hucknall, which is a large town just north of the city of Nottingham. Again, it was 6 days. No one could go in, no one could go out except the military and the police. So, tree. This is a photo of a tree I took in Thieveswood, near the area where just close to the actual clearing. You can see by its size and its development that it actually was around at the time that this happened, and it survived the fire. Nigel says that he spotted some damage to the trees. He says there's like these pink spots on the bark, which he says is the product of fire. He says some of the trees are bent over, and he says this is because of that fire. I suppose it would take an expert to sort this out. Somebody, a dendrologist, I think they're called, people who study trees, would have to go in there, and we'd have to that'd be the second stage of research, because this is something that I can't do myself, nor can Nigel. Maybe people can analyse the soil there. As I've said, you can't get onto Annesley Hall and do any research there, they won't let you. But Thieveswood is open to the public. You can go there anytime you like and check it out. So there are similarities, as I said, to the Bellaway Mountains incident. This is an event happened in January 1974. As I said earlier, a large explosion. Very loud bang, lots of vibration. Objects seen on the ground. Immediate military response. If the government know in advance where these objects are going to come down, or obviously they don't know exactly, because otherwise they could just position the troops directly underneath the landing zone. But they seem to know within a certain area that something is going to happen. They seem to have some warning in advance when it's going to happen, and they know the rough area where it's going to be. So they can deploy their assets forward to deal with it as and when it happens. So it's a very, very simple matter to then deploy the forces into the areas where it actually happens, after it's happened. So this is a very, very interesting case indeed. Lots of information about that online. There's some videos by Richard D. Hall and several other people about this. There's also the cover-up. There's also a lot of distortion. There's a lot of obfuscation through the media. There's a lot of attempts to silence genuine researchers, I consider, and highlight and elevate the status of what I would consider less proficient researchers into this event. I don't know if this will happen with the Nottingham or Roswell, because basically it was kind of forgotten in 1997. It's basically just been resurrected by me. We'll find out. This is Porton Down, Wiltshire. It's the kind of place, now this is the big question, if the debris, if distinct physical evidence of an extraterrestrial artifact which was found at Annesley Hall, or some debris was found at Thieveswood, where would it be taken? Where would they take it? Well, this is kind of the British equivalent of Area 51. There's a chemical and biological weapons establishment here. There's a foreign technology study division, things like that. Very similar to Area 51. This is probably where it would have been taken. It may have been flown out with the Chinook helicopter that was seen at 2:15 in the morning. Maybe they got it. Maybe they flew that in so they could get if any large pieces of debris were there, they could get it out quickly as possible. Maybe that was the plan. This is the kind of place you would find. That kind of activity. Now, this is a Grand Who's played Grand Theft Auto? Oh my goodness me. Oh dear, that's...
There you go, UFOs and gaming.
Yeah, my goodness, you need a life. But this is, I just found this actually. I was just googling UFO crash in a city, and I came up with this amazing scene here: a flying saucer crash in the city, Grand Theft Auto 5. I might play it now. Just because of this, just to find out about this. And that's not an excuse. Honestly, I swear. Now, one of the things the skeptics say, and I don't know if there are any skeptics here today, but one of the things they say things like, "Well, how come UFOs always crash in some remote area? It's always the Devil's Armpit, Nevada, or some place in the middle of the desert, or some wild mountainside when no one's around. They don't crash in cities where people can easily see them and they wouldn't be able to cover it up, do they? How come the UFOs never crash there?"
Point of order, if it's crashing, how the hell does it know where it's going to land?
Well,
Hey, good land in a bloody city.
well, I know. Well, that's a good point actually. That's one explanation. Another is, of course, there are several other explanations. Firstly, the world is not actually inhabited to the density that it is perhaps in Britain. I mean, a lot of these skeptics who say these sort of things are British. We in Britain we live on an island of 2,500,000 square miles or something, or 255,000 square miles. There's almost 60 million of us on here. I mean, most of the firstly, almost 3/4 of the Earth's surface is sea, so it's water. Of the remaining 35% or so, that's the land surface. Over half of that is almost uninhabited. It's either too cold, or it's too hot, it's too mountainous, it's for various other reasons, people can't live there. So there's hardly anyone lives there. So actually, we humans may be spread out across the world, but actually our centres of population are actually quite scarce. We only occupy, like, in terms of the entire Earth's surface, we only occupy, to a great degree, with the infrastructure of human civilization, probably about 10 to 15% of the Earth's surface. And so that's why the reason that UFOs tend to crash in areas where there's not much human habitation is because you would expect them to most of the time, simply because so much of the world there is no human habitation. And what's more, UFOs do sometimes crash in densely populated urban areas. They're not in conurbation, where this happened in 1987. Happened in an area, as I said, it's really a kind of patchwork of large towns, farmers' fields and woodlands. So it is a semi-urbanised area. Are you familiar with the Virginia incident of 1994? Was it? No, 1996, sorry, 1996. Yeah, that happened in a town of 100,000 people in Brazil, where something came down, a craft came down, little aliens were found wandering the streets. So that brings us to another point. I mean, if you have a lot of experience in covering up UFOs, and the government does. In fact, Admiral Roscoe Hillencutter, the head of the CIA, the first head of the CIA actually, in 1947, when the agency was first founded, he actually said something very interesting. He said that the government is soberly concerned about the UFO issue, but through official ridicule and denial, we will lead the people to believe that the whole issue is just nonsense. And we see that policy enacted to this day. What I mean is, we're dealing with people who have a lot of experience with covering up. They have they know about psychology, they control the media, they know how to put out the right memes into society to influence the mass consciousness of people. That, I think, is when you realise how good they are at that. If a UFO did come down, like here in this big city at a crossroads, would they be able to cover that up? Perhaps they would. Perhaps because they could say it was, I don't know, a strange bouncy castle or something that someone had decided to blow up. If they did that, imagine this actually happened. And then the police came up and they put big barriers around it. They told everyone to go home. And later in the day, the newspapers and TV said, someone decided to play a joke by putting a huge saucer-shaped bouncy castle up at the crossroads. Ha ha ha, very funny, but really we want this road open now so people can go about their business. How many people would believe that? Even the people who saw this, they saw it come down. I think a large number of them would, you know. If they can cover up a UFO crash retrieval...
Especially Americans.
Well, yeah, they do tend to be more naive, yeah. But if they can cover up a UFO crash retrieval in Nottinghamshire, in a suburban Nottinghamshire, where can't they cover it up? I think they're very confident in their abilities to do it.
Because a lot of people actually don't want to face the reality that exists, do they?
Precisely, yeah. Wishful thinking, cognitive dissonance. They know about these things. They know how to get inside our heads. They've got organisations which have the government have brought in to study us and say, what do we need to say and do so that we can control these little two-legged animals? They've done that.
Our whole life's been designed that way.
Yeah.
From birth to now.
Yeah.
The media, the whole thing is designed to keep you dulled down, isn't it?
They know there's a few of us, like the people in this room, who they can't control.
Yeah.
They know that our minds are beyond their ability to... But then all they do is they just make everyone else laugh at us. That the cover-up's maintained. Now there's another. Now Harry Mason, in his article in Nexus, he focuses a lot on this possibility, and that is that what we were observing with the Nottinghamshire Roswell was actually not extraterrestrial. It was some sort of secret weapon. It might have been an experimental aircraft, or some other kind of esoteric weapon that the government were developing. This is a distinct possibility. It would explain the government's response. It would explain the speed of the military presence, the speed of the military establishment of the military cordon in the area, because if there was some kind of experimental weapon test going on, they may have brought forward those forces, those helicopters and those other things, those other assets, to act as security and in the eventuality that there was some kind of crash. This is a distinct possibility, but what sort of weapon are we talking about here? Something that explodes over the English countryside, causes this electromagnetic pulse. Why were they doing this? Why were they testing this over Middle England? Another possibility that Harry Mason brings up is that this wasn't a British weapon. This was actually a Soviet weapon. So the Russians actually fired it at us. That's highly unlikely given the political situation at the time. If it had been earlier in the Cold War, you could say it was a possibility. Do you recognise this chap? This is Mikhail Gorbachev. He's the last president of the Soviet Union. Now, when he came to power in 1984, he changed the Soviet Union completely. He had somebody called perestroika and glasnost, restructuring and openness. What he did was he actually very shrewdly realised that the Soviet system was unsustainable, and he wanted to change it in order to save the actual Soviet Union and to perhaps alter it into a form that it could exist in the modern world, or the world that was emerging. What this essentially meant was that the Cold War came to an end. This guy here, essentially, while he was in power, he was doing deals, arms limitations deals with other nations. He was opening out his country to the world. He wanted to end the nuclear standoff between the two sides, which threatened the existence of life on Earth, etc., etc. And so he was also a very good friend of Margaret Thatcher, who was the British Prime Minister at the time. In fact, when she died in 2014, he came to her funeral. So the idea that the Soviet Union under Gorbachev will be firing weapons at Great Britain seems to be a political contradiction. It doesn't fit with the mood of the times. In fact, within 4 years of this happening, the Soviet Union was actually disbanded. Gorbachev couldn't save the country. It did fall into chaos, and eventually the Soviet Union itself collapsed, and the various independent states that we know today, Russia, etc., came to be. So again, that doesn't make any sense. So, well, we've got to look at the logic of it all, haven't we? Logic's a great thing. You basically say, well, Arthur Conan Doyle put it very well with his character Sherlock Holmes. If you eliminate possibilities, what have you got left? Logically, what have we got left? If it's not a Russian weapons test, if it's not a British weapon test, it's not a bolide meteor, or as Andy Roberts, the sceptic ufologist would call it, a bolide meteor. If it's not any of those things, what is it? Something from out of this world? I think that's actually probably the most likely explanation. On sheer logic alone, on what I know about ufology and the incidence of UFO events in this world, especially the Roswell type events, indicates that the most likely cause of the Nottingham to Roswell, this event in November of 1987, was the presence of an extraterrestrial craft. And whatever else goes with it, but the aliens inside, I don't know. There were no reports of aliens at this event, just the objects coming down. So, well anyway, as Nick Pope would say, we can't rule it out, to quote him. Now, I want to thank you all for listening to me, because it's been a longer talk than the previous time I did this, because I had a few updates. But please do pick up a copy, as Dave was saying, of my book Roswell Rising, a novel of disclosure. This actually deals with the entire UFO exopolitics disclosure issue in a fictional allegorical form. It basically asks the questions: what if there'd been disclosure after Roswell? And I've got, these are £9, but there's a couple of dog-eared copies which you can have for a £5, because it's my fault, because I put them in my bag and I didn't keep them very well. But I much appreciate you being here, so thank you very much for listening. Yeah, I'll be glad to come back for Q&A.
Okay guys, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. Absolutely fascinating case, and one which I barely knew at all anything of, really, and it must have been quite fascinating kind of being there and going and checking out in more depth into that. You know, it's like research on the ground, there we go, you see. That's what it's all about, really, going out to the places where it occurred, trying to find out extra information, and I think all credit to Ben, you know, for that, you know. There's very few people these days in this kind of world of, you know, armchair enthusiasts and all that sort of thing, because it's all moved online and everything's, you know, everything's talk on the internet, but there's not that many people actually getting out there and actually doing, you know, actual research and going and visiting places, meeting up with people and that sort of thing. There should be a lot more of that, you know, but this is the modern world that we now live in, you know. So yeah, absolutely great. We'll have a bit of a break now, and then.
Still got 96.
Okay, so here we are, it's 10:30, and without further ado, can you please give another warm welcome to Ben Emlyn-Jones.
Thank you very much. Right then, please form an orderly queue. So, does somebody have a question that's been bugging them for all their life and they really want to get it off their chest, and they need me to provide the answer?
42!
Oh, there's a gentleman at the back there. Yes, sir?
Shoot down these UFOs.
Do you think we should what, sorry?
Do you think we shoot them down?
Do I think we shoot down UFOs?
Because it would be a way of knowing that it's going to crash.
Yeah, that is an interesting question, and it would, yeah, because it would also explain the very swift response of the government to the presence of an extraterrestrial technology. If somehow these craft were being attacked by forces of maybe not the military, but of the covert government, the shadow government's forces, because encounters between conventional military forces and UFOs invariably results in the humans coming off worst. The humans always lose in all these kind of results. These craft have technology which can shut down an aircraft's electronics. That can, all these kind of things you hear all the time. As for the secret government, it may have much more sophisticated weapons, perhaps adapted from the extraterrestrials themselves. There is some evidence to suggest that this does happen. A very interesting thing was actually a piece of footage. I think we were talking about this during the break. a space shuttle piece of footage from NASA, which shows something remarkable. There's lots of interesting UFO footage coming out of NASA, especially on the space shuttle missions. One of those showed a disc, what looked like a disc-shaped object or something, flying through space, and you suddenly see a big bright flash of light from the ground, and the craft immediately doglegs and flies away, as if it's trying to get out of the way of something. Immediately following that happens, you see like a streak of light coming up from below out into space, as if someone on the Earth's surface has discharged a weapon to try and shoot this UFO. We don't know what kind of weapon it is. It's not anything conventional, because no missile or anything could bring down this UFO in space. Now, what's interesting is someone worked out exactly what they worked out from when that happened during the space shuttle mission, exactly the position of the shuttle. They worked out that where exactly on the Earth's surface that weapon, that streak of light, came up from. It was actually Central Australia. Now, there is actually a base called Pine Gap in Central Australia. It's an American base on Australian territory, and it's possible the weapon came from there. So the answer is quite possibly, or the answer is yes. I don't know, but it looks quite likely. So thank you for that question. Tony.
Pine Gap, is that anywhere near, was it Woomera, where they used to send the space shots from in the 60s?
Yeah, I think Woomera, Tony's asking whether Pine Gap is near Woomera. Woomera, I think, was where they were testing missiles. And what's interesting about Woomera is there was a report of an alien that was seen walking around where they were going to launch the missiles. A creature in a white suit, like a humanoid creature in a white suit, with like a little hood, like a beekeeper's outfit. What's really weird is at that very same moment, on the other side of the world in Cumbria, a guy called Jim Templeton was taking a photograph of his daughter Elizabeth. And amazing, in the picture you can see the very same creature, or an identical creature.
Spaceman,
yeah, the Saltways of the Spaceman, yeah. And interestingly, the Blue Streak missile was developed in a place near there. So it could explain that the Blue Streak missile was being tested at Woomera, Australia, and the Saltways of the Spaceman appeared where the Blue Streak missile was developed. And you can see the Doomray nuclear power station in the background as well. That was in May of 1964. And at the very same moment, these two creatures appeared on opposite sides of the world. So, yeah.
If I could just come in on the Australia thing, Australia is larger than the whole of Western Europe put together, so define near.
Yeah, all right, yeah.
200 miles as near.
I've been there actually. Yeah, it's huge. Yeah, it's a huge country. Yeah, I don't know exactly. Dave?
Yep. So Nottinghamshire, Roswell. You talked about through the talk. You talked about speaking with a number of witnesses, or hearing their, or reading about their testimonies in newspaper articles. Have any of these witnesses gone on camera? Have you got like video recordings of meeting, with them and having a chat with them? Because obviously, have you done that yourself, or do you know if any exist that we can hear online?
Nigel is the only person I've actually interviewed. I mean, we did actually meet a man on my first expedition into Thieves Wood, who wouldn't appear on camera, but he did tell us that he remembered the event. Ashley Rye is I don't know who Ashley Rye is, I've never met him, I don't know if Nigel knows him. But Nigel has spoken to the insurance broker, he says, and to the TV repairman.
So maybe you could put some leaflets in the area, through people's doors, saying if anybody's got, or maybe stick up some around the area, sort of saying, if anybody, remembers the incident and was there at the time, whatever, and wants to give testimony, you could get in touch with you.
Yes, a good idea. I put out several appeals already for witnesses. No one's contacted me yet, but that's a good idea, actually. Yeah, it's a good idea. Sometimes people are more likely to. Like we knocked on people's doors when we were there in the hope that someone would remember something.
Yeah.
But sometimes people are more likely to maybe answer something like that rather than something they see online.
Yeah, because it comes from them.
Yeah.
Directly, so.
Yeah. Okay, good idea, Dave. Yeah. Anybody else? Tony's got another question. Is it alright if I go with Tony first if no one else has one? Right, Tony? Yeah.
I'm going to be greedy. I've got two actually.
Okay.
The woods, the first woods that you visited, the small square patch that you looked at, is it easily to get to have a look at by the public now?
Yes, it's very easy indeed. You just drive up the roads between Ravenshead and Kirkby and Ashfield. You can park. You can even drive the car a short distance into the forest track, and you just walk. It's about maybe 500 yards. and you can go there anytime you like.
Right, thank you. And the second part is, I don't know what you've done to get witnesses in, but we get a really good response by press releasing to radio stations, especially the BBC, which surprises me because I wouldn't have thought the BBC would have been helpful, but we've had a better response from the BBC.
The local stations are given a lot of independence.
Yeah. So BBC and also local papers, we get a good response.
Right, that's another good idea, similar to what Dave was suggesting. Yeah, that's a good idea for a follow-up.
If I could just mention in passing, if anybody is going to that area, there is an excellent steam pumping station at Papelwick. Beautiful, one of the best preserved steam pumping stations anywhere in the country.
Yeah.
If you're not into steam pumping stations, ignore everything my dad just said. It's got nothing to do with UFOs. That
No, but you might as well go and see something nice while you're there.
Has your dad got a bobble hat by any chance?
There you go. Now you look like a steam engine bloke.
There's a gentleman over there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've got one for you, mate.
Sorry?
Right, I've got one for you.
Okay.
You said the army, the RAF, the whole thing, shut it off for a week.
Yeah.
Is nobody coming out from the army, the RAF, and saying I was there, this happened?
So far, no one has actually reported either we've got no specific evidence from military sources or the emergency services or the police. Presumably these people would know something had gone wrong, something had happened, there's no doubt about it. For instance, Nigel has checked records for, say, red alerts in the emergency services, the fire brigade. Also, I mean, the hospitals, major incidents at hospitals, things like that. He's not managed...
What about the guys on the ground?
We need another
Whistleblowers,
the army guy that actually shoveled up.
Yeah.
No one has spoken out yet. I mean, obviously, people in the armed forces are bound by very, very strict classification laws. We can hope, I mean, I always put out a appeal for information. If anyone wants to contact me privately, I will not reveal who they are. It's true that people on the inside are speaking out. Insiders within the military, within the intelligence services, within other government services are speaking out. And we've got, in fact, there's been an entire witness video made by Dr. Stephen Greer of various people like this. There's air traffic controllers, there's members of the US Marine Corps, there's pilots, there's astronauts, people like Dr. Edgar Mitchell, Apollo astronaut. Apollo astronaut, when he came back from the Apollo 14 mission, he actually went back to his old hometown in Roswell, and he was one of the first people who actually talked about, because people approached him and they talked about aliens because he'd been into space, etc. So, yeah, we can only hope that one of them does speak out. But
Could you not track them down from the local...
the Ministry of Defence wouldn't divulge that information about that. I don't think.
You could find it yourself, not in a army base, whatever it is. Couldn't you?
I could look into that. Yes, you're right. There may be some information. There may be. Yeah.
One very obvious thing. It's probably an extremely stupid question. Have you checked the Profos database?
No.
I know you could be a policeman.
Yeah, you're right.
Gary's 2,500 witnesses.
Yeah, I mean, Gary knows about this particular event. I'll ask.
Just pick the phone to Gary and tell him whether there is.
I'll be seeing Gary in a couple of weeks, so I'll bring that up with him.
If there isn't a direct witness statement in there, then there will be someone who has witnessed for Profos who knows somebody who knows somebody.
Quite possibly. Yes,
if
quite
you just
possibly.
find who the bobbies are that have put up a post on Profos from Nottinghamshire sometime in that period, they're most likely to know someone else who knows about it.
Yeah, I'll be seeing Gary in a couple of weeks. I'll ask him. Good idea. Tony?
As Richard D. Hall found out when he was trying to find out some details about one of his cases, when he spoke to these military people, it seems like the closer you get to the middle of it all, you're talking about some serious stuff going down.
Yeah.
They're terrified to talk, aren't they?
Indeed so.
Yeah, Richard got in touch with the guy. Well, Tony Dodd at first interviewed him, and there was a guy called Derek Goff who got in touch with this guy. He actually used to be in Special Forces, and he said he attended many, many events of UFO activity, including some pretty horrible stories about reptilian beings, human mutilations, etc., etc. Richard's, he's been talking to this guy, and he thinks he's very credible, as did Tony Dodd, who was actually a police investigator himself. So yeah, There are people on the inside speaking out. There are people that are inside people who've been involved in these operations speaking out. Because there's no way you would know that something like this had happened unless you were on the inside, or unless you knew someone who was on the inside who divulged it to you, a family member, a member of your unit in the army, or something like that. It may have let something slip. So, gentleman at the back.
Sorry, just about the whole Nottingham thing. How did you yourself find out about it in the beginnings and got interested?
It was, I think it was, I came across that article, I came across the Harry Mason article. I started talking about it online. I was in the Nottingham area anyway, and I knew Daniel Bostock. And I think that's how it all kicked off. I can't remember exactly. There may be information in my first Nottinghamshire Roswell movie where I actually talk about that. It was quite a while ago now, but I remember I got in touch with Daniel, and Dan and I sort of like talked about it, and we decided to investigate. But I think I read about it online. I read Harry Mason's article, maybe in the back issue of Nexus or something like that. So, anybody else?
Have you had any close encounters?
Close encounters, no. I've had several sightings of extraterrestrials. Or I've had a dozen. I've seen a dozen times. I've seen things in the sky I can't explain. Maybe 3 or 4 really defy explanation, actively defy explanation. In other words, there were things that I cannot. I was seeing clearly enough to see that they didn't fit any known terrestrial explanation.
Can you give us some details on it? Sure.
Yeah, there was one I saw. I was with Tony Topping actually on the beach, and we went out onto the beach at Probe. This is when he was speaking at Probe in Lytham St Downs, Lancashire, on the beach. And he said, "Come with me. I'll show you one of these things." And I went out on the beach with him. Don't look at me like that. Tony and I are just friends. We're friends. And he said, "There'll be one along in a minute." He was quite confident. I thought, "What do you mean?" And this strange light, it's like a bright light appeared, sort of like looping around in a kind of arc. It flared up and it just went out. This was late at night on the beach. And he said, "There you are." And I thought, "Blimey, how did you..."
Fries your brain, doesn't it?
I also saw one which I reported to Dave. This is one I reported to you, the spherical white object I saw over Oxford. I saw a spherical white object over Oxford in 2008. Looked like a ping pong ball in the sky. It wasn't a balloon because the wind was blowing and it wasn't moving. A very odd thing like that, yeah. So I know there's something up.
There's a case report on that. It's on the BUFOG website.
Yeah, check it out on BUFOG's website. Yeah. So who else would like to bare their soul? Anyone?
Yeah, I've got an interesting one actually. It's nothing to do with Nottinghamshire Roswell, though. Something. The Peruvian mummies thing. Who had any updates on that?
No, I've talked to Steve. Steve's going to. He says, Brian. They're saying I'll be the first to know when something happens because I'm taking a real interest in this. This is some of these amazing mummies that have appeared in Peru. Now, obviously, stories like this break out all the time, and 99% it's nonsense. However, Steve did go over and investigate. Steve Mera, who's a great investigator from Manchester, he actually really wanted to look into this to see if they were real or not, because these seem to be much more interesting than the usual bump that comes out. So he actually travelled to Peru and actually saw these mummies, and he actually managed to take enough data from the mummies. There was X-ray pictures, there was DNA tests and things like that, which he's currently having analysed, which should hopefully provide a final answer into what these things are. These are very strange humanoid creatures. There's one called Maria. It's been nicknamed Maria. It's a female. It looks like a woman, partly like a human woman. On one way, she is like a human woman. She's about the right size, but her hands have just 3 very long fingers, and so do her feet have 3 long toes, and her head is an unusual shape. It's very, very much like these things like the Paracas skulls and the long skull people that you sometimes hear about. Really, if this turned out to be anomalous, it would be brilliant. It would add to the other anomalies, such as the Star Child skull and the Paracas skulls. The Paracas skulls are not just bound. They're not just head binding. They're not just a product of head binding, because the South Americans used to bind heads, and there's lots of bound head skulls where that skull is deliberately misshapen. But these are totally different to the Baraka skulls. The Baraka skulls really are something that's not completely normally human as we know human. So I'm really excited to know. As soon as I hear about this, I'll speak out about it, because I'm really hoping it does turn out to be something genuine, not just a hoax. Because in Peru, I mean, the Peruvian media is really badly covering it. They're very obstructive towards Steve. When Steve got there, they were hacking his phone and everything like that. There was a press conference at his hotel in Lima, in Peru, and the staff had been very obstructive. They were banging and bumping around, trying to interrupt things. The TV, like the Wi-Fi signal, went down when Steve was doing his periscoping. There was kind of there's all kinds of, and Steve had to. The only way he could see these mummies when some car picked him up mysteriously, and they said, "Leave your mobile phone at home, get in this car, we're driving you somewhere." And they drove him high up into the Andes Mountains. It was like Indiana Jones. It was like that, and he saw these mummies at a secret location. It was very exciting.
I've never seen Steve again.
Well, Steve did live to tell the tale. They did let him come back, and so we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens.
Didn't the mummy actually have an extra or less ribs in the rib cage?
Yeah, he had different rib cage. The hands and, like I say, the hands and feet were extremely unusual.
It's definitely biological then.
Steve thinks so, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a couple of things next to... See, this was Maria, whoever she was obviously someone of some importance, because she was buried in this tomb. So she was some very, very politically significant person. And they had these 5 other mummies next to her, but Steve thinks they might be replicas, they might be some kind of hoax, they might be just models. But Maria is real. I mean, he thinks Maria, she's got bones inside of her and things like that, and organs. But we won't know until the final tests are in.
Unfortunately, the skeptics are pulling in information like, what's the Mexican journalist?
Jaime Maussan.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
The fact that he's been involved with subjects in the past that turned out to be fake.
Yeah, poor Jaime.
He was led astray, doesn't he?
He has, yeah, but I mean, that in a sense is kind of like poisoning the well. The skeptics do this sort of thing a lot. They say, well, look, he's made a fool of himself before by being involved with proven hoaxes, and he has, unfortunately. Jaime does sometimes jump to the conclusions too soon, but that in a sense is not, it's not a declaration on whether what he's up to now is real or not. So that's the difference. I mean, if this can be proven to be real, it doesn't matter what Jaime's record is. He got lucky this time, you know?
Yeah. Evidence is evidence.
Yeah. The skeptics, I mean, the local Peruvian skeptics have been all over the TV apparently in Peru, saying this is a hoax, it's not real, it's not real. And they haven't even seen this mummy. They've not looked at it, they've not gathered any data from it. They're assuming it's a hoax a priori, which to me is not very scientific. And like many skeptics, these are ideologues, not scientists. They say that they are rational, they use words like science, empiricism, things like that. But these are slogans, not descriptions of what they are. I mean, I've done an entire presentation on that, so I don't have time to go into details, but do check it out, it is on YouTube. So, gentlemen there?
Yeah, you know you were talking about the Roswell, the Nottingham Roswell. Some of the houses were damaged during the explosion.
Yeah.
Has anybody been to interview the people in the houses? Because if that happened in your house, you would want to know what was going on. Also, has anybody been to see the insurance company? Because surely the insurance company would investigate the instance to find out what caused the damage as well as repair.
Well, the actual article which actually interviewed this guy said that the insurance company tends to be looking more for acts of fraud.
Yeah.
So it's not the insurance company's job is not to test whether or not a real UFO actually appeared. Their job is to.
There may be people in there that's willing to talk to you separately to the insurance.
Well, I'll tell you what, they want to contact me. Yeah, I mean they've talked. Nigel's talked to one of them. I'll ask Nigel if he'll let me speak to these people directly, because I'm sure he will. He'll maybe give them if they're willing to speak to me. I mean, it's up to them.
They would want to know what happened.
Yeah.
In order to obviously allowed to claim to go through.
Yeah.
They're looking for fraud.
They're looking for fraud. In this case, what we're talking about here is a real incident. I mean, I don't think there's actually, the insurance company wouldn't really have a problem with it unless there is an obvious suspicious element of fraud. In this case, we're not looking at fraud, we're looking at an unknown cause of damage, which is not the same thing as fraud. So they'll be quite happy to pay out for that.
Yeah.
They can't deny it.
But what I'm saying though, for example...
Unless there's a UFO clause, there may be a UFO disclaimer in their policy, I don't know.
No, I don't think that. But if I was working for an insurance company, for example, and this sort of case came, I was interviewing the people in the house and they were talking about we've heard that the UFO exploded, then I probably want to know a bit more.
Well, no one said anything about UFOs at the time. What they said was that there was a large explosion and shockwave over that area, which damaged multiple properties. There was a lot of damage done, and the electromagnetic pulse effect as well. In a sense, the insurance company, it's not really the insurance company's job in that. I don't think in.
No, that's not where I'm coming from.
Okay.
Where I'm coming from is to talk to the individuals as well, for the insurance company, to see if anybody had themselves decided to take it upon themselves to go and investigate.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
They may have heard something that will take you down a different track.
Maybe, yeah. Well, I'll ask Nigel to ask me if I can speak to these people directly, yeah. Because I know Nigel's talked to these people, and John King did, and the people who came out with the initial reports in the 90s. But, Dave?
Can you tell anybody about the new book? You mentioned earlier on you're writing a new book, yeah? Can you let people know a bit?
I will indeed, and that's...
Or is it totally like...
Thanks for bringing it up. That's not a planted question, honestly. Dave's been genuinely curious. Yeah. I'm writing a sequel to Roswell Rising, which several people have. Someone's won it, and someone's won it. Danny won it, that gentleman bought it. Which is called Roswell Revealed, a World After Disclosure. So there's already a sequel in the pipeline to this book. So if you buy this book and read it now, hopefully you'll finish it in time, and then you'll be able to read the sequel, which is coming out. Well, when I finish it, I mean, hopefully in the next few months I'll get it finished and I'll get it published. But do come on, if you're interested, anyone else interested in a copy of Roswell Rising? There's still some here. I think they're all. There's a couple of. There's a £5 dog-eared one, and there's some others for £9. So.
I recommend it.
Yep. Oh, thanks, Tony. Yeah. Tony's not ready yet, but thanks, Tony. Yeah.
I've read it, and I can recommend it.
Thanks, Dave. Yeah.
I'm not just saying that because Ben's in.
No. If you like UFOs, you like disclosure, you like Roswell, all that kind of thing, this is the book for you. It really is. You can read a sample chapter. I've got a sample chapter free online on my website, so you can read that if you like first, and then you read the first 3 chapters for free, and then after you've read that, and if you like it, you can read the rest of it. I'm confident that you will. Okay, sir.
Ben, presumably, I mean, on that initial film, that removed all the evidence. You know, the trees were removed, and as you said, it was filled with sand. That's the initial impact area there. But has anybody actually taken any measurements there, so with a guided data or anything like that?
Not to my knowledge, and that again is been up to secondary research. This is what I'm looking into now. I'm getting some people who have more knowledge, are more expert at things like dendrology. I'll say people who know about trees, people who can maybe take radiation readings and things like that from the local area. That is the next area of research, I think. That's something I need to get into. Focusing on the Feedswood site is much more easier, of course, than the Annesley Hall site. So there's a lot of plentiful possibility there for research. So yeah.
Radiation still exists.
Well, after 30 years, there may be something. It depends on what kind of radiation or how powerful it was. I mean, we know there was a fire there. I mean, anybody else? Don't be shy. Anyone? Is that all? Well, thanks very much, all of you. I really appreciate your contribution and for the questions you've asked me. Really, really do. I hope you've enjoyed my speech and these questions. And if you bought a copy of the book, if you want one, come up and get one. If not, you can order it online at another time if you prefer. But thanks very much for coming, all of you. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Absolutely superb evening. I hope you've enjoyed Ben's talk. It's been really great having him back here again. So yeah, as I mentioned earlier in the night, I'm going to be giving a lecture for the first time here next month on UFOs and the history of video gaming UFOs, how they've been represented. It's going to be on Thursday the 21st of September. So I'm going to get that booked in now.